Hello and happy Friday. It's me, Virginia, and this is the Living on the Verge podcast. We have a very supersized episode today because there are new shows, there's a lot of Bravo news, we have current events going on. So I'm going to jump right on in and get this party started. First, let me give a shout out to my Instagram friend at Concert Craps. I won two tickets to Brad Paisley's concert last Saturday night in San Diego. And I just want to shout you guys out and thank you very much for the tickets. Everybody follow at Concert Craps on Instagram, and you too can win free tickets. The ones I won were obviously down here in San Diego, but I do follow them and they have tickets all over the country that are genuinely free. So thank you, Concert Craps. And we also have to spend just one quick second because we got another 5-star review and I promised that I would shout you guys out if you did that. So Bravo Fan 59 says her episodes are full of content and very interesting with lots of side comments. She is quite opinionated, but in a good way. I listen to this podcast regularly and I love it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I always try to keep it real. And so with that, let's move on and talk about The Valley, Season 2, Episode 9. We're at Christian and Luke's housewarming. Okay, first of all, I'm about to get shady right off the bat. I understand having guests over when you've moved and you don't have things on the walls and stuff like that. But with boxes and garbage and clothing all over the place, just because maybe you're a messy housekeeper, I mean, either get it together or maybe wait another couple of weeks before you have a housewarming. The house is adorable, but it did not look like it was housewarming ready. That's my opinion. The kebabs, however, they look delicious, and I would not have minded having some of those. And you know what? It seems like this is a really good group of friends. Nobody showed up empty-handed. Everybody took the time to celebrate their achievement. And we even see people that we did not see before, but we have seen in the Bravo world before, and just not on this show. And one of them was Jenna. You might remember Jenna. She is Lala's friend, obviously friends with the whole group, and she's Lala's personal trainer. You guys, what is scrotox? And why are we talking about scrotox? Oh, Zack. Scrotox is a medical procedure that involves injecting Botox into the scrotum to improve its appearance and potentially address issues like excessive sweating or discomfort. It is a minimally invasive treatment that can relax the muscles of the scrotum, leading to smoother skin, a perceived larger scrotum, and reduced sweating. The effects typically last for several months and require periodic follow-up treatments. Why? Just why? Well, let's get back to the party. So everybody's there, and then in walks the tension, also known as Jason and Janet. Jasmine admits to everybody that she's chatting with at the party that she felt ganged up on at the beach and she just wants the issue to be over with. So she approaches Janet and Jason and asks if they could meet for dinner when Melissa is in town. And everybody seems to think that that's a good way to move forward. And even Jason and Janet are very happy about the exchange. So good, maybe we're making progress. Sheena tells us she got salmon sperm on her face. Why? Just why? Well, Jenna tells Jesse that she used to date Aaron, Michelle's boyfriend. And Jesse starts to put the pieces together as per usual. You know, Jesse's a big private detective. Anyway, he concludes that there's some crossover, more than likely, allegedly. Well, Jesse remains convinced that Aaron is the guy, or among the guys, that Michelle cheated on him with, and says Luke told him a story about how he heard Michelle was dating someone during their marriage and couldn't get a hold of him, so she showed up at this someone's house and caught him with another girl. So now Jesse thinks that that may have been Jenna because the timing seems to fit. Well, Luke's talking to Danny about the impending proposal, so we know that's coming up and that they're going to have a whole trip surrounding the proposal. So I'm excited for that to come because that'll be a light moment in the Valley season 2, which has otherwise been quite dark. I think everybody could agree to that. So we see Brittany telling the group the story that Jenny told her, which is that apparently Jax manipulated the receptionist at the rehab center into telling anybody who called that he had gone to the emergency room, so much so that he made her cry. Then she tells Janet about the email, and okay, who's the ginger dude in the background with the 3-day-old looking army green t-shirt with the collar that looks like it's ruffled? I don't understand why he's like stuck there. He can see there's a big camera in his face. He's literally not any part of it, but he wants to be in the shot. Well, alrighty then. So Brittany says that if she doesn't resolve any of the issues with the house, that she's ready to fight. And she also tells us that the therapist told them the following day that Jax had lied and had never left the facility. So we see Lala with the black socks and the baby bump, and her bump is bumping at this point. And they get to talking about how their kids act when they get back from being with the other parent. And it's interesting to me to hear the exchange because at this point, we're several years out from Lala and her ex's situation. And I know that they recently settled it, like not that many months ago, but she says she still cries every day. That's sad. I wonder if it was just because she was pregnant. I wonder if we asked her that now, if she would have the same answer. Well, she chooses to be very sensitive and very kind, and she asks Michelle how her mom's doing, but she doesn't know if she's supposed to be asking because she doesn't know if Michelle wants to talk about it. And Michelle does essentially want somebody to be her friend. It's really sad. We all know that since this episode, mom has passed, but the story is that she thought she had food poisoning and she had to go to the doctor. And once she got there, she was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. And the first chemo didn't work and they're trying everything. But Michelle tells Lala that she doesn't think she has much more time with her mom. Very sad story. Well, let's brighten it up a little because things are about to take a turn between the ongoing Janet, Jason, Melissa, Jasmine, that whole feud over the alleged ring comments, etc., etc. Everybody meets at El Compadre on Sunset, and this is the home of the Flaming Margaritas. The menu looked pretty good. I didn't spend a lot of time looking at it, but you guys, they made up. Long and short, they made up. Melissa says we don't want to spend time, trying to decide who said what or who did what. And I am just so refreshed by this conversation because it sounds like we're all coming from the same spirit and we just want this behind us. Jason and Janet immediately say that they know that Melissa and Jasmine are good people. Jason needs a little bit of clarity on what happened on the beach. And Jasmine starts off by saying that she doesn't think Janet is a Karen, but Janet says that she looked up the meaning of a Karen and that she may have some tendencies. Jasmine mumbles, everybody's got a little Karen in them. I agree. And do you know what a boy version of a Karen is? It's a Kyle. I only know this because the other day my granddaughter called my son a Kyle, and I thought it was hilarious. So you live and you learn. You learn something new every day. Melissa points out that she's so happy, and they all hug it out and live happily ever after and eat Mexican food.
I'm pretty excited to walk out that door. I have anxiety, I'm anxious, I'm scared, but you know what, it's time. I know I have a lot of apologizing to do, but I just hope that they can see that, you know what, he's making the progress, he's taking the steps, he's trying.
While Jax is pouring his heart out to us, Brittany's providing her friends with 7 million calories of crappy fast food to help her pack Jax's crap up, so he won't have an excuse to come to the house when he gets out of rehab. Jasmine, Nia, Janet, Michelle, Zack, and Kristen all show up to help. And if I do say so myself, there is a lot of food there. But Brittany tells everybody that if anybody says the name Jax, they will have to take a shot. And poor Michelle, as she's watching, realizes there's no food for her there because she doesn't eat the same way Brittany does. Zack tells the group he thinks they should all take Brittany out for one last night before Jax gets out of rehab and that they should go to Jax's. We all know that they're going to surprise Britt and turn Jax's into Britt's for one night because we all saw that on Instagram last summer. But either way, this is the episode in which it happens, and I have mixed feelings, but let's move on. Michelle tells us she wishes she was getting the same support that Brittany is getting because she feels like she's a great friend, but none of this is being reciprocated. That's super sad. It must suck to sit there and watch everybody else getting support for something that you are going through as well, and you're just kind of lost in the dust. To be fair, Michelle, I think part of it is because you come across like nothing bothers you and as if you're a rock. So maybe people don't think you need the support or the help. Not that that's right, but that just might be one of the reasons. Well, they get to packing, and at first it's fun.
One shoe. One shoe? Yeah. One shoe. Separate them. He can find a shoe in another bag. Yeah. Separating his shoes. It's like a way to get Jax's brain working. It's like how you work with little toddlers and you're like, okay, match this with this. Let's be real. Cruz is more of a man than Jax is these days.
But then Brittany starts to get really emotional and she tells us that she loves Jax and, it's hard for her. And she says she's leaving because leaving Jax will make her a better mother for Cruz. So the scene ends on kind of a downer. Surprise. Brittany goes to see an attorney before Jax gets out of rehab because I guess he's getting out the next day. So we meet attorney Nas and she asks Brittany, hey, what's going on? Well, Brittany almost nonchalantly says, it's gotten really bad. He's punching walls and throwing furniture. That's really, really bad, Brittany. She goes on to tell Nas that Jax is in rehab and then she shows Nas all of these rage texts that he's been sending. And she says that he's been watching her through the cameras at her house. And Nas says, he's stalking you. He's obsessed. And she agrees. And then she tells her, again, very nonchalantly, and he even stopped paying the mortgage. Holy shamoly. This girl had gotten so desensitized to the crazy that until she heard herself say it, she didn't realize how crazy it really was. We finally hear, I'm not going to get into the whole mortgage thing again, but we finally hear the amount. Jax was $1.2 million past due in taxes before he and Brittany got married. And according to Brittany, if she wouldn't have allowed them to refinance their house to pay off the taxes, he was going to go to jail. So that kind of sucks. Well, eventually Nas says, listen, I think that it's a good idea to file sooner than later, probably because it's a way to get it across to Jax that the marriage truly is over. So Brittany walked in expecting to have a consultation and walked out having filed. And when she tells Nas that she can't believe she's not crying and that in fact she feels relieved, Nas tells her that that's the sign that she's really ready. So that's the end of that marriage. The gang works tirelessly, meanwhile, that evening to cover the sign that says Jax's with one that Zack painted that says Britt's. And they put big giant letters that say Britt's that light up inside of the bar. They cover all of the pictures of Jax all over the bar with pictures of Brittany. And everybody is sporting a Britt's Studio City t-shirt that looks exactly like the Jax Studio City t-shirt. So Brittany's driving with Kristen and Brittany tells Kristen that she filed for divorce and Kristen is mildly shocked but very, very, very thrilled. And so are we, right? We're happy that she finally just put an end to this. Is there anybody out there who thinks that Jax and Brittany should still be together? I mean, listen, there are a lot of people who have changed their mind on sweet little Brittany, but I still don't think that they're good together. They were a toxic combination, any way you slice it. Brittany tells Kristen that she doesn't want anybody to know, and they move on. So they pulled it off. They were able to surprise her, and she was, appropriately thrilled and grateful. I think the whole thing is weird. And I was taken aback by the girl with the hoops and the tan leather jacket and the black leather skirt that looked like a Kristen throwback lookalike. Did anybody else catch that? I don't know. Again, a little insight to how my brain works. Sometimes when I've lost interest with what is going on, in other words, I didn't think this was a great idea. I was kind of team Jesse. Like, how do I go pick this guy up tomorrow and tell him this? Kind of stinks. At one point, they're all sitting at that table that's in the center at Jax's. That's the same table he was sitting at eating when he got up in the middle of his meal and got me a baseball cap. So, you could see where I might think the guy's a nice guy. He does do some really sweet things, and not everybody on the cast is against him. There were still people who are maybe not Team Jax, but they haven't abandoned his friendship. So, I don't know. Well, they're all sitting at that table, and we can tell that Danny's already drunk, but he is still pretty activated about all the shit they've been giving him. So he first points out to Nia that he didn't take the shot that they were trying to give him, and he made sure that he wanted her to know that, and she says thank you after sniffing it. That was a little sus. But then he starts to get really pissed off, and he gets involved in the conversation, and he just starts to make it worse. Well, Nia tries to stop him, but he doesn't relent. So she essentially throws up her hands and just walks away. I don't understand what's going on in this moment. I don't like any of it. But it turns out that Kristen approaches Janet. She is the one who started stirring up the shit, and guess who told her? 3, 2, 1. Sheena Shea. Yep, it was Sheena. So Danny starts, getting activated, and eventually Jason tells Danny that you're being weird, and then Jesse says, hey, let's go for a walk, and Danny gets up and goes and tells Nia what's going on, and Nia's like, let's get the hell out of here. So she grabs his phone and calls an Uber before anything can get any further out of control. But she's mad about what's going on, and she's not happy that the girls are, riding her husband like. Who else noticed Kyle Chan waving as Danny walked out? He got another little cameo. Good for you, Kyle. Well, the episode comes to an end as Brittany and Jesse are talking, and Jesse tells Brittany he's not drinking because he's picking Jax up tomorrow, and he's concerned about Jax regressing immediately because of all the haters and all this crap that's going on. He's afraid that they're kind of, baiting him. I don't entirely disagree with Jesse. That's what I said just a little bit ago. I don't think that making Jax's Brits for a night serves any purpose except to try to trigger Jax. And if what you guys all want is for Jax to be better so that he could be a better ex-husband and co-parent with Brittany and a better dad to Cruz, then how is doing this leading to that in any way, shape, or form? So Zack, I understand you wanted to have your girls back, but at the end of the day, I don't agree with this decision. I'm sure you got a lot of buzz and a lot of hoopla, but no me gusta. So real quick on the after show, Jack said he was pissed because everybody was having a good time and he wasn't. So essentially he tells us he had FOMO because he wasn't filming, and that's pretty obvious from the way he was behaving. Well, believe it or not, Jesse is Team Brittany and says Jax was kind of stalking Britt. Jax, of course, can't just admit it. The funniest part is Schwartz staring at the producers and the bewilderment and the rest of the time he's just kind of staring at the floor. The bad part about it is that Jax talks a big talk, but he can never give us specifics, ever. Leave it to Lala. She could give us some specifics. She tells us about a selfie that a girl sent Brittany from Brittany's bed with a picture of Brittany and Jax's son, Cruz, behind her in the selfie. I mean, just appalling. She says she's gotten screenshots and DMs from multiple women with things that she never needed or wanted to hear or know. And Jack says they both do a lot of things to each other, like tit for tat. Except he says it Jack Stilo. Listen.
A lot of things to each other, like the tick for tat.
The tick for tack. I'm dead. I just can't. That's freaking hilarious. Jack's, listen, we should start a book of Jacksisms. That'll probably sell better than his merch. In case you guys haven't noticed, my tune has changed throughout the course of the season when it comes to Mr. Jax Taylor. I don't like the way he's carrying himself this season. No surprise there. Jax tells us this elaborate tale about how he's not good enough to have manipulated the receptionist about going to the emergency room, and so on and so forth, with a whole bunch of double speak, yada yada, all to say nothing, except that he maintains it didn't happen. But then he also tells us that he's getting a vasectomy with Danny, and Daniel says, no, it never happened. So we know with Jax, you just never know. I thought it was an interesting revelation. Janet tells us she only takes baths. There's a system, of course, and she does a full rinse with the sprayer after, but she says they've been in their house for 4 years and she's only taken a shower one time, that she is a bather. I didn't know that that was a thing, but I know I like to take baths from time to time, but that's not my standard method of cleaning my body. So to each his own. I'm not going to judge. I got enough things to pick on Janet about if I really wanted to. But we all remember, I am trying to be firmly Team Janet. Brittany says she's put a ton of money into the bar, and I think that's her defense for why they're doing this. She says she never got the money back and yada yada. Jax just says the whole thing is horrible and childish, and I agree. Well, I found this very funny. Jax is sitting in rehab examining photos, and he deduces that the leg and the shoe in the photo belongs to Schwartz. So he proceeds to deduce that Schwartz was in fact at the party when they turned Jax's into Britt's, and goes on to rip him a new one and rage text him about how angry he was. Schwartz tells us he was out of town. Well, see, this is what I mean. Jax is just like obsessed with the fact that he wasn't on screen when everybody else was filming. And I talked about this on the weekend at WeHo, but Britt finally tells us that they sold the bar out from under her. And Jax tells us that it's because he was not part of the deal. He was supposed to get 30%, but when Brittany decided not, Brittany decided she didn't want to work with him, and so that's why the whole thing didn't happen. Tom Schwartz says having a bar is a nightmare, and he talks about his bar trauma and feeling like the walls are closing in. So he says Brittany lucked out. I don't know, but again, the last time I went to Jax's, it was not very busy. So I don't know how Jax's is doing like all together. But Brittany tells us she's going to win. You guys, we all know there are no winners. There are no winners. There's one loser, Cruz. But Jax tells us that it's not worth it and that he's trying. So he clearly wants to come across as being the good guy and, taking the high road. But then his actions and his behavior on Instagram shows us exactly the opposite. So that's why I've had to kind of pivot away from I think Jax has learned his lesson stand that I originally had. Well, we still have Next Gen New York City to get through, and Real Housewives of Miami started this week as well. So I am not going to belabor it any longer. I'm going to jump right in. I love Next Gen New York City. I'm sorry, does that sound crazy? I'm not wanting to love it, and then I loved it. My son called me and said, hey, I watched it. It looks refreshing. It reminds me of old Vanderpump. Well, let me tell you about it, and then I'll tell you what I think about it, having watched episodes 1 and 2. First, let's meet the cast. We have Brooks Marks, who is Meredith Marks from Salt Lake City's son. We have Ariana Bierman, who is Kim Zolciak's daughter from New Jersey. And we have Gia Giudice. We know whose daughter she is. And Charlie Zakor, Ava Dash, Riley Burris, who is Candy Burris's daughter from Atlanta. And we have Georgia McCann, who is like a New York socialite, kind of gossip girl. Well, Ariana and her boyfriend Hudson, they moved to New York together, and they couldn't eat. And Ariana shows us this torn up Christian Louboutin. She says they set her back $800 and they're not even red bottoms anymore. True, half of the red bottom was missing. She goes on to tell us the story that she was an influencer from the age of 14. She'd been on TV since she was 5. And by 14, she was making quite a bit of money. Unfortunately, her parents took her money. And she only found out about it 2 years ago, so she had nothing. And yet, she had just seen her mom on her Instagram story drinking a $200 bottle of wine. Well, that's not bad enough, you guys. Hudson tells us that what really upsets him is that Kim still calls and asks Ariana for money because she says that she needs it for the kids. So Ariana can't say no. And Hudson tells her she really needs to start. Ariana comes back with, well, it's not really any of your business. And he says, no, it's not my business. It's our business because we're together now. Hudson's right. Hands down. Kim, get off your daughter's payroll. Embarrassing. Old Soul Georgia makes references to Harry Met Sally and tells us that aura is the new vibe. I'm so old. Am I among the only people besides Georgia on the show to get the Harry Met Sally reference? In other news, turns out Charlie dated Lindsay Lohan. She was much older than him and cougaring, but nonetheless. Georgia and Brooks met through Charlie, and apparently Charlie is known for being notoriously late. He proves it to us in episodes 1 and 2, but he has a thing for Chloe, and he invites her out on a date. Yikes. He and Brooks are good friends. That's already all bad. We get to see Ava Dash. She is Damon Dash's daughter, and her mother is a famous fashion designer as well. They're divorced. Ava's a very accomplished model. Damon does not think that that is a career she should be having, but the two of them have a really good relationship, and they have lunch. He talks about how he needs to shoot himself with insulin after every meal, and she asks if they have health insurance because, oh, by the way, I have acne, and I can't have acne with what I do for a living, and I need to get my IUD removed. Repulsed, Damon storms away from the table saying, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about it. You're making me want a joint. I like that cat. He seems like cool people. Well, Charlie Zakor is into cryptocurrency. His dad was a big investor, and apparently his dad gives him money. He's a trust fund baby. He gets around $10,000 every month. Ladies and gentlemen, let's play What Celebrity Does He Look Like? Who do you guys think Charlie looks like? They decided he looks like Scott Disick and Barry Manilow. Not bad. Try this one. Scott Disick and Charlie Sheen. That's my vote. Chloe meets Charlie for drinks as promised. This is not good. I'm already saying it. Well, but the place they go to for drinks had some cool specialty drinks. One was hanging in a sphere glass, the one Charlie ordered, and the one that Chloe had was served in a bathtub looking thing. It looks like they got some sort of shrimp cocktail or some sort of seafood. And as I'm watching it, it occurs to me that's Meredith Marks's daughter. They have a lot of the same mannerisms. Thank God for Chloe, she doesn't have her mom's voice. But, you know, it's fun. It makes it more fun. Well, to me at the party, the most notable thing that happens is the fact that the girls all go to the bathroom together and Georgia says she doesn't wash her hands, and it grosses Riley the fuck out. Changes the way she's acting with her and treating her. She won't hug her. She doesn't want to touch her. Well, Riley Burris, Candy Burris's daughter, tells us she just graduated from NYU. She wants to be a DJ, but she only has a year before her mom cuts her off. Good for you, Candy. Good for you. Hold them accountable. Do what they need to help get them ahead and give them a fair shot in life, but don't carry them through for the rest of their lives. It doesn't make for good character. Well, Riley tells us she's been in New York for 5 years and she's just now starting to get adjusted. She says compared to Atlanta, it's kind of just a jungle and every man for himself. I don't know anybody that has not said that about New York at one time or another. Then we hear about Gia Judice. I could do without her. She comes in from Jersey anyway, and I'm only 2 episodes in, so I don't want to call it yet, but maybe she shouldn't make the drive. I'm trying really hard not to hold my contempt against Teresa, against her daughter, but they seem like 2 peas in a pod. So even though, like I said, I'm not ready to call it, she's on thin ice with me, just by association. The moms joined the group. This is part of one of the other cool things I think about this show is that we're going to get flashbacks from Bravo shows and we're going to get visitors from time to time. Today we have Meredith Marks and Teresa Giudice. They show up to have lunch with Brooks and Gia, and apparently Gia and Brooks have been bonding over being housewife kids for years. They all met at one point at BravoCon, but did anybody else notice that Teresa just had to break the fourth wall and tell us that one of those producers is on her show? It got me thinking, how delusional is she really? Well, after a little bit of research, I find out that this episode was filmed, or this show started filming in July of 2024. And it turns out that the last episode of New Jersey was also filming around summer of 2024. So at that point, I guess she still could say she had a show, but she's still somewhat delusional because it was never her show. Well, they tell the moms that Gia was accused of being Brooks's mouthpiece, and Riley thinks they went too easy on Charlie. Then we get a bunch of flashbacks of crazy Teresa, and it gets me to start wondering how much of the designer things that they're showing in every single one of those clips do we think is not real? Allegedly, the New Jersey housewives, in particular Teresa, and I have it on a pretty good source, they're notorious for their fake designer wear and their fake designer merchandise. So shame on you, ladies. Enter Amira. She used to be an it girl and the beauty director at Paper Magazine, but then she moved on to become the first ever Black transgender model at Victoria's Secret. This girl is beautiful. I had heard that there was a transgender model on this show, and honestly, I couldn't pick her out as transgender. Would it not for her voice? But even then, I had to look it up to make sure I wasn't being presumptuous. This girl is gorgeous, carries herself in a beautiful way, seems very down to earth. And this boyfriend of hers, Kevin, he is just a gift. He's the cutest. They're talking at lunch, and to give you an idea, he doesn't know the difference between, he calls it pirata, and what he's referring to is Prada. I find this adorable and completely refreshing. I'm liking Kevin. And we also meet Dylan. He's a poet/artist, and he is telling us he can't believe how entitled Charlie is because he grew up in Chicago. He was a wrestler, he was an MMA fighter, and he did pretty well, but then he got hurt. So now he makes most of his money on OnlyFans. And we meet Charlie's dad too. We find out that Charlie grew up on the Upper East Side, no surprise there. And Dad Anwar was a very good father, but not a very good dad. He says, Charlie tells us he could never talk to his dad about the emotional nonsense. The fact that he says emotional nonsense says a lot because it means that he was taught that emotions didn't have very much value, and that makes me kind of sad. Well, then we get to see Riley and Ariana's reunion, and that is just so cute. It was fun to watch. The flashbacks of the two girls when they were little, so cute. They were just adorable, and they've grown up to be gorgeous, gorgeous young ladies. Riley is gonna show Ariana the New York ropes because she just got there, and so they agreed that they're all gonna go out the next night. Why was Charlie such a douche to Ariana? I don't know. But in walks Georgia with clean hands, and all the bad blood with her and Riley just seemed to melt away. Riley got up and hugged her and said it's all good, and she sounded just like her mama when she said that. And then Charlie pulls Georgia outside to talk more shit, including calling Hudson a cuck. This guy, I don't know. Riley's trying to have Charlie's back, but even she thinks, he's being a dick. So she finds it a little hard to defend him. My body, my choice, says Georgia. Because she says that if she doesn't want to wash her hands, she shouldn't have to wash her hands. What are your thoughts on the whole hand washing things? And what about girls sitting down on a toilet, a public toilet? I was taught to hover. If you didn't have toilet paper, you hovered. And when I was a kid, I was really good at hovering. I could hold my hands in between my legs and kind of do that yoga move that is equivalent to what they call a pigeon over the toilet, because that's how paranoid my mom had me about not sitting on public toilets. So it's definitely a choice, Georgia, and I'm not going to judge you. Everybody else has moved on, so I'm going to move on as well. They all head to this other club, and Georgia's actively posting. And Ariana and Hudson are dancing, and they point out that they both really like Georgia. But Charlie just won't stop with the Chloe comments to Brooks, and it's really starting to get on his nerves. Lucky for us, we have Ariana Bierman there, and she's going to confront Charlie, and his doublespeak starts again. I don't know you. I don't know anything. I was very respectful. Then he goes on to pivot and essentially accuses Ariana of being well rehearsed because he says, I don't know how to be rehearsed. He doesn't say it, but he's referring to the show and faking beef, etc. And it just pisses Hudson off. So Charlie wants to act like an idiot instead of, bringing things down a little bit. He threatens to take Hudson around the corner. Well, Hudson is not going to back down. So as we have episode 2 ending, Charlie and Georgia want to go to the party, but the other 4 are supposed to go to the same party. So there's a little bit of conflict. Charlie and Georgia jump in an Uber and take off, and the other 4 hang back and talk about how wild this whole night has been and how crazy Charlie is acting. You guys, I feel like Next Gen NYC is a mixture of season 2 and 3 of Vanderpump Rules, but like with a much cooler backdrop being New York and a much more interesting cast given some of their stature in society and the fact that some of them are Bravo kids. And we have that familiarity that makes it more comforting. Plus we have the new additions and the wild card like Charlie. And, so far the edit is he's the villain. And I gotta say, I'm enjoying watching the Bravo kids because it's fascinating to see their behavior and some of the body language and some of the character traits that they have that we've seen in their parents all these years. So it adds that little twist. I love the families coming from time to time. I think that this show could really bring us some entertainment over the summer. So I'm excited. Let me know if you're watching and what your thoughts are. And I need to move on to Miami, you guys, because gosh, we have a lot happening with regards to reality TV this week. Season 7, episode 1 started Wednesday on Bravo and Thursday on Peacock. Well, the season opens with the flashback to April 2022, and we see Alexia and Todd's wedding. And while we're watching the clips of the wedding on the beautiful yacht, We hear Todd's vows being dubbed over and all the mushy gushy stuff he's saying, fireworks included. And I mean literally. 2 years later, April 15th, 2024, Page 6 reports RHOM's Alexia Nicola's husband, Todd, files for divorce after 2 years of marriage.
Is this real? Like, they just got married. You don't break up right when, like, you work things out.
Yeah.
And this is our third marriage.
I guess Adriana was right.
Yep, I was right. And that's the one time I wish I was wrong.
Very sad. We flash back to Alexia crying in Marisol's arms, and Julia is there, and she gets to hear the recounting too. So here's the story as Alexia tells it. They went out for dinner on Friday, had a beautiful dinner, an amazing evening of intimacy. He couldn't have been more flattering or loving. And the next day he moved him and his daughter out. Apparently, unbeknownst to Alexia, they had rented an apartment and he had been moving things in for the previous 30 days. Alexia is furious that all of this was done in front of Frankie. The following Monday, they spoke and they started talking as if nothing was going on. They talked about therapy and possibly reconciling. And then Thursday, she's told by her attorney that he served her with divorce papers. So 2 days after this, Alexia is on the phone with Teresa. Yes, that Teresa, you guys. She really needs a paycheck. Where is she not these days? Well, Teresa's checking on Alexia, who tells us that the hardest part about this is that she was blindsided and she's just inconsolable. She cannot stop crying. I listened to her podcast when all of this was going on, and it was really sad. You could hear the emotion. She could not be consoled. Marisol was beside herself trying to figure out how to console her friend. And it was just really, really a sad, sad time for this girl who clearly was blindsided. Fast forward to 5 months later. So around September of 2024, Alexia and Marisol meet at Level 6 in Miami Beach, a rooftop bar specializing in modern Spanish cuisine. The girls order their drinks and they wait for Lisa, and they use that opportunity to talk shit about Lisa and Lisa's ex and his breakup with the mistress that ended Lisa and his marriage. We all know his name. I don't want to say it any more than I have to. Marisol confronts Alexia about the fact that she didn't tell Marisol that she was seeing Todd again. We knew that. We heard it on Instagram. Well, Marisol's upset because she found out on Instagram too. Alexia doesn't apologize. She says she's in love with Todd and it's really hard. Oh my gosh. Lisa gets there, brings up Todd and Alexia. They go through that again, but Alexia tells her, I'm in love with Todd and he's in love with me too, and neither of them can move on. Marisol chimes in with her opinion.
Listen, baby, sometimes what's right for the whole isn't right for the soul. Just gonna say. And I've been there.
Our friend Marisol thinks that her bro, Alexia, is dickmatized. What do you guys think? I'll tell you what I think about the girls in Miami. They just don't eat. I noticed this last season, and so far, season 1 is proving me right. They literally ordered hamachi crudo, which is basically raw fish, and dates. I checked. The dates come with 2, and there were 3 of them. I checked the menu. Both look delicious, by the way. $24 for the hamachi crudo and $14 for the dates. Lisa invites Marisol and Alexia to a Marilyn Monroe themed party that she's having for Jody's birthday. They want to know if Jody's inviting Marcus Jordan, given the recent split that he and Larsa Pippen have had. Boy, what a mess that was last February. Oh my God, there was news. They're together, they're apart. They're together, they're apart. He's in Europe. Oh, guess what? He's in Europe, allegedly sniffing white powder. Oh, Dad just saw that and he's mortified. I mean, this went on for a while. So if you guys did not watch Miami before, go back and watch last season, because I want to do it maybe when I have nothing else to do, just to see if we could tell if the guy was, having a party with the white stuff, allegedly. We find out that Lisa and Larsa had a falling out over the whole Marcus situation. Apparently, Jody is not directly friends with Marcus, but Marcus is friends with Jody's closest group of friends. So Larsa's pissed, according to Alexia, and says that Lisa should have controlled Jody. Lisa is definitely gotten stronger. She got much more of a backbone, and she tells the girls to talk to Jody about it. And Marisol says, well, maybe I should do it at Jody's party. And Lisa says, don't do it or you'll get kicked out. Girl, tell them how you really feel. It seems to me like you are not speechless this season. Julia and Martina are child-proofing because they're adopting 2 baby boys, 2 brothers, ages 3 and 1.5 years old. Julia tells us Martina is thriving as a new parent. Enter Gertie. Julia tells us that Gertie did not join the call where she made her big news announcement, and in fact, instead just sent her a cold message saying congratulations. $32,000 a month for a rental? Wow. Lisa and Jody moved into this 6,000 square foot home, and it's beautiful, but $32,000 a month? My goodness. Also, did you guys notice the flashback of the kids last week at the house? It seems to me like the kids are acting out a little bit. You know, to be honest, Lisa's not really had a lot of control over those kids, but now they're 9 and 4, and it seems like it's gotten a little bit worse, which is to be expected when you go through a public turbulent divorce. But, you know, not that you're asking me for any advice, Lisa, but if you were, I would tell you these are really important ages and you need to get control of the kids, because there comes a point where you lose control for good. Okay, soapbox over, let's move on. Larsa's mama is visiting and she's cooking. Larsa tells us about her breakup with Marcus and his alleged unraveling. And I just said it, we all remember the headlines and the pictures last year. But she tells us that even her kids told her to get off the ride. First of all, I need to say, I really wish that I had a mama who came over and cooked for me. I would love that. I'd love to sit and have a drink while mama's cooking. And, you know, my mom was not a big cook. It's not something she enjoyed. So of course it's fine. But it just seems like it would be a really neat thing to have your mom come into town, stay with you for a couple of weeks, treat you to all her special dishes that she makes, and so on and so forth. Well, anyway, Larsa gets really emotional telling us about the story. She says she's embarrassed.
And I don't want to have to address it. It's so embarrassing.
Why is it embarrassing?
Just all of it. I fought everyone to be with this guy, and then it was not a good situation for me and my family. So I had to remove myself from it, but doing what was best for me and my family ended up pissing him off so bad that he sent me really bad messages and then reach out to my friends and say hurtful things about me, and it was just bad.
So what's this fight all about? Well, from Lisa's perspective, they kept making up and breaking up, and she didn't want to make an enemy in the event that they got back together. From Larsa's perspective, she was trying to remove toxicity from her life, and she wanted her friend to have her back. So, in my opinion, it's a simple case of y'all should have talked it out. Kiki and Gertie board a gorgeous yacht, and Gertie tells us her cancer battle really put her through it. She had over 20 surgeries, you guys, and multiple times that in radiation and other treatments. She has a really good attitude about it, considering everything she's been through. Well, Kiki tells us she's a member of the Miami Yacht Club, but she dated the owner of the Miami Yacht Club, so she always has access to yachts. Adriana joins them on the yacht. It was good to see her. I like Adriana. Kiki tells us about her summer. She said her son just started college. She moved into a new home, and she had a new boyfriend, but they're not together anymore. Apparently, he had a girlfriend the whole time. Then Adriana tells us that she's been dating a French guy for about 6 months, and that she knows that she's a creature of habit, but she doesn't want to repeat the mistakes of the past. Well, Adriana seems to have turned a new leaf because she tells the girls that she just wants to be there to support Alexia, given that she knows what she is going through, and on and on and on. And Kiki gives her a side eye, like, what the hell? They flash back to a bunch of times over the prior seasons where, in particular last season, where Adriana has come down hard on Alexia. And we're quite certain that it's never going to be Alexia going to Adriana for comfort and support. That's just probably not in the cards. Here we are at the party, you guys, and I must say, I miss the fashion of Miami. Miami does fashion like no one else. They all have gorgeous banging bodies. They're not afraid to wear interesting clothes. They don't dress like each other. They all have their own individual style, on and on and on. But we meet Marquis Amari, Adriana's new beau. Can we talk about Adriana's PDA with this Marquis dude? Okay, I'm going to come across as if I'm age shaming, but really what I'm trying to say is there comes a time in life when certain things should be a little more private. For example, you know the cute little grandma and grandpa that you see walking down the street or into an ice cream shop and they're holding hands and you think, God, that's amazing. I hope that we have love like that one day. Now, it wouldn't be quite the same thing if they were macking out and filling each other up, and it wouldn't. So that's all I'm trying to say, really, is there comes a time when you should keep that stuff between you all. We had that awkward moment where Gertie's asking about the boys and Julia is not having it. She tells Martina that she thought that was super fake. And who wants a bone marrow shot with tequila? I'm not sure how that sounds. I did not get into the whole bone marrow craze, and I'm not a tequila person, so it's not for me, but, you know, I'm sure it's for some. Well, Larsa gets there, and she tells Lisa that she wants to talk to her, but by this time, Lisa's admittedly drunk, and it's just not the right time. Plus, you guys, it was time for Lisa's outfit change. Hello? Aye, this girl. Well, Gertie tells Martina she feels like she's on the outs. You kind of are. Martina, not wanting to say much, just kind of listens and then wriggles her way out of the conversation and runs off to get a drink. Larsa's still upset and she brings it up again. But listen, these two ladies, they need to find other best friends because they're not very kind to one another, drunk or sober. Lisa says Marcus and Larsa must have broken up 4 times, and that the first time they left a real party for their fake breakup. Larsa calls her a bitch, so Lisa loses her mind and starts screaming at her for her to leave. Well, Lisa gets super activated, and Maricel tells her, I think you've had too much to drink, monkey. And Lisa says, coming from you? Maricel says, yes, coming from me. Didn't bat an eyelash. Crack me up. Well, Kiki confronts Larsa, and eventually she returns within a few minutes. She's throwing her out again. You know, the girls weren't happy with the way Lisa kept throwing Larsa out of her house, but Lisa didn't back down yet again, and the episode ends with a very, very intoxicated Lisa singing her own Marilyn Monroe rendition of Happy Birthday, Mr. President to Jody. The supersized season preview looks like it's going to be a great season. There are a lot of mixed feelings about Miami. I like this franchise. I find it entertaining. There's always something going on. So I'm going to cover it. If you guys don't want me to cover it, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to continue covering it because I enjoy it. And I think it'll give us some fun fodder throughout the summer. But real quick here, let's move on to pop culture and current events because, you guys, there's so much going on. First of all, and most importantly, the National Guard and additional troops were deployed last week to Los Angeles amid ongoing protests against the ongoing raids ordered by the current administration. A curfew is in place, and many families have been torn apart. So this is, an active story. I'm sure that it is not over yet, so we will continue to cover it, but regardless of what side of this issue you are on, I think we could all agree that this is very sad for our country. Let's move on. Justin Baldoni's $400 million lawsuit against Blake Lively has been dismissed. But apparently it's not over yet. We'll see. I'll let you know. And Harvey Weinstein was found guilty of sex crimes in his retrial. Thank goodness, and no duh. And the defense rests in the case of Karen Reed. So we'll be hearing how that ends very, very, very shortly here. And finally, let's move on to Bravo News because there's a lot of it. Jax cancels his podcast tour due to being dropped from some venues because of show backlash. And within a few hours, US Weekly reported that he was going to stay off social media to prioritize his mental health. Okay, good luck, Jax. 3-day tickets for BravoCon sold out in record time, and 1-day tickets go on sale today at 12 noon Eastern and 9 a.m. Pacific. And in my personal Bravo news, last week's episode of the podcast featuring The Valley was viewed by pretty much the entire cast of The Valley. And I thought it was so cool. And Jasmine DM'd me, and she sent me the link to the shoes that I asked her about in the pod. She said they were sold out, but she sent me the link. That was super cool. Okay, moving on in Bravo News. Monique Samuels is returning to Real Housewives of Potomac for season 10. I liked her. I didn't like the way things ended with her, but I liked her, so maybe she'll stir things up. Potomac was a little dull for me this last season. And then Cynthia Bailey launches a new skincare line called Glowissima. Listen, Cynthia, if I could look like you look, I will buy whatever you're selling. Shannon Bedore says Eddie Judge has small dick energy on Watch What Happens Live. And Tamra Judge sounds off on Instagram going at her. So apparently these two are not on good terms. I don't know what happened during the season, but when I saw this headline, I tried to think back to when I was at the Boot Scootin', the filming of the Orange County episode that I was at. You could listen to that on an earlier podcast if you're interested. But anyway, you guys, Shannon and Tamra were not together at any point throughout the evening that I saw. So I wonder if they were beefing throughout the season, because when the previous season ended, they weren't in a bad place. So I'm a little confused. I guess we're going to have to wait and see. Well, looks like RHOBH has started filming season 15, and we all know the latest announcement. We have a new cast member. Rachel Zoe is joining the cast. A lot of people are excited about that. Then we also know that Bryn Whitfield quit a non-existent Roni this week. You can't quit something that isn't there, Bryn, but good riddance. And we know that the other Britt Edie, doesn't show up to the reunion of Atlanta and files a $20 million lawsuit against Bravo. Well, if you were wondering whether or not she'll be back next season, we just got our answer. Simon, Portia's ex, is released from ICE custody and sent back to Nigeria. How apropos. And finally, Sarah Fraser of The Sarah Fraser Show and David Yontef of Behind the Velvet Rope shouted me out in their podcast after our lunch last week. I had a great lunch with you guys. I can't wait to do it again. I got to meet another podcaster, Scott Nathan. And you guys, it's all good. We're all having a good time. It's been a good week. I hope you guys have an amazing weekend. I'll be back next Tuesday to bring you all the latest and greatest. And until then, have a good weekend, you guys.